Hello children, and welcome to Fruit Stories. I'm Blossom the human.
And I'm Petals the human.
And we're here because we have a lot of questions. Here at Fruit Stories, we plan on taking an in-depth critical perspective on Veggie Tales.
This week's episode was God Wants Me to Forgive Them.
We'll be talking about some very cranky grapes. And forgiveness?
But first we have a viewer-submitted question from Susie Smith. She asks, "Why should I ask for forgiveness if God has already forgiven my sins eternally after being born again?" That's a great question, Susie, and we'll get back to it at the end of the episode.
But first, let me set the scene for our foray into the lives of those cranky grapes. In the first part of the episode, Junior Asparagus is quietly playing in the front yard of his home when the Grapes' family vehicle comes to a stop when they hit a bump in the road. When they see Junior, they immediately begin to talk about him like he isn't there and make fun of him for his appearance and demeanor. These grapes are so hateful, they drove a forest to commit suicide. Eventually, this teasing brings Junior to tears, which alerts his father. Junior's dad comes outside and asks why his son is crying. When Junior tells him that it's because the grapes made fun of him, Junior's dad explains to the grapes why what they did was wrong. After the grapes acknowledge what they did was wrong and apologize, Junior's dad tells Junior he has to forgive them since they really mean it. After thinking it over, he decides he does forgive them.
But then, as soon as his dad goes back inside, the grapes continue their mocking of Junior, now for his name. Having had enough, Junior goes to confront the grapes before accidentally running into a garden hoe, falling into a toy truck, and being launched in the air when the truck made impact with the sandbox.
Instead of checking to see if Junior is alright, the grapes continue to mock him, which once more gets the attention of Junior's dad. The older grapes scold the younger grapes for their treatment of Junior, and once more they say how sorry they are. However, this time, Junior is having none of it. He is visibly upset at the prospect of having to forgive the grapes yet again, and voices his frustrations to Larry, breaking the fourth wall.
Larry in turn asks the grapes if they are really sorry, and then tells Junior that because God has forgiven humans countless times before, that we should forgive others as God forgave us. Having had a change of heart, Junior decides to forgive the grapes a second time, and then everyone makes up and the grapes drive away better people.
There's a lot to unpack there. What seems on the surface to be a wholesome tale of learning to forgive becomes a little bit more sinister when you look between the lines. Part 1.
Victim blaming. Junior forgave the grapes only to be laughed at again for his name and series of unfortunate mishaps.
Like stepping on a garden hoe.
Or being launched into a sandbox.
But it really is made more Junior's responsibility to forgive the grapes, who only admitted to doing wrong after they got caught. It's far too common in Christian culture to deny your own feelings and forgive those who have wronged you.
So often, kids in Christian homes aren't taught that they have any agency for themselves. How many times as a kid did your parents make you hug somebody, for instance? 3 times? 4 times? 5 times? 6 times?
Junior was in no way obligated to forgive the grapes. And teaching him, and by extension, the kids he represents that he is, sends the message to kids that they shouldn't expect for anyone to respect their feelings.
If you take nothing else from this show, please remember that you are never obligated to forgive anyone. Treat your feelings as important because they matter.
The idea of forgiving those who have wronged you becomes even more murky when there are other factors to consider, like an imbalance in power structures? Part 2. Racism in Christianity. Diversity of skin color is not really something that's seen in Christian media. Most of the time it's painfully white. Churches, especially Protestant ones, are still fairly segregated. I don't remember seeing a person of color in church until I was maybe in the 6th grade.
I had the same experience.
The closest me and Petals can come to understanding this is that we're queer. Growing up, I was noticeably different from other people, and something very similar to what happened to Junior happened to me.
While there is not a lot that 2 white queer kiddos can, or really should, say about racism, it is a problem that is vaguely hinted at in this first segment, even if it wasn't intentional. The grapes specifically go after Junior's personhood, his hair, his hat, his name, which are all fairly common areas of discrimination for people of color in America.
But how does all of this come back to forgiveness? Marginalized groups of all shapes and sorts are consistently fed this narrative that they are required to reward those who oppress them simply for not oppressing them anymore or as much. This expectation to be forgiven, especially when the perpetrator isn't fully aware of what the real damage is that has been done, is far too pervasive in the dominant culture. It needs to be reiterated that it is not the job of a person of color or any other minority to be either educator or absolver. Members outside of a minority need to educate themselves and listen to the voices and perspectives of people of color and not demand forgiveness or absolution simply for taking the effort to, for a single moment, try to understand what their life must be like. When we come back from the silly song, we'll be looking at a completely different way that Big Idea screwed up the concept of forgiveness.
Blossom? There isn't a silly song this week. Instead, we got the Forgive-O-Matic, a much-needed contribution to the world of Veggie Tales. Let me ask, Blossom? Do you have a Forgive-O-Matic?
I don't.
Then let's move on.
In the second segment, Big Idea treats us to a Gilligan's Island parody.
I don't know if we can parody a parody. Can we?
Maybe not, but we sure as heck can rip it to shreds.
I'll sum it up for you. Bob and Larry are running a cruise service, and are out with a few passengers when Bob, who is playing the part of skipper, gives Larry, the stand-in for Gilligan, the helm and leaves his subordinate unsupervised. Larry has a daydream and crashes the boat. Bob is unable to forgive Larry, so Larry, thinking he isn't good enough, leaves. Bob looks for Larry the next day, and when he finds him leaving the island, finally accepts his apology and escapes from the island thanks to one of the passengers fashioning a flying machine entirely out of bamboo and coconuts. And all the while being serenaded by a never-before-seen and never-seen-from-again palm tree.
Now, based on our discussion from earlier, you'd think that we would agree with Bob's actions from this part of the episode.
And you'd be wrong.
Part 3. Intent and
action.
In the first segment, the reason that Junior was justified in not wanting to forgive the grapes is because the harm they caused was intentional. They didn't care that what they said would hurt Junior's feelings. With Larry, in the second part of the episode, it's a little bit more complicated. Larry was left by himself in a role he was likely unqualified for, and expected to be able to handle it entirely without any kind of monitoring.
Bob was just as much, if not more, at fault for the crash of the boat as Larry was. Making Larry the scapegoat was downright low.
And when Bob does actually decide to forgive Larry, it's only after Larry has gone missing and is about to leave the island and his abusers, because guess what, children? The way Bob was talking to Larry is abuse. Plain and simple.
Larry's reaction to Bob telling him his apology for smashing the boat wasn't good enough is an all too common reaction for children of abusive homes. The actions of the parent cause the child to think it is they who are not good enough.
When a child makes a mistake, the proper response is to make them aware of their mistake and move on. Bob's and the passengers' treatment of Larry in the episode is unacceptable. When Big Idea initially centered this part of the episode in Larry's mistake instead of Bob's, whether they meant to or not, they sent the message to children that it's their fault when they mess up and that people's hateful and cruel reactions to them are justified.
Now it's time for Queerty Corner, where we summarize what we learned from this week's episode.
This week's Queerty Corner is brought to you by childhood trauma. Childhood trauma. We all have it. The verse for this week was Colossians 3:13b. Forgive others as the Lord forgave you. Speaking of, didn't we have a great question at the beginning of the episode to answer?
We sure did. The question was, Why should I ask for forgiveness if God has already forgiven my sins eternally after being born again? The answer is beyond me and my knowledge of the Bible. So I'm going to take this time to promote smoothies, a healthy and tasty way to get your daily dose of vegetables and fruit.
Well, we're all out of time for today, children. I'm Blossom the human.
And I'm Petals the human.
Catch up with you next time!